Good afternoon, everyone. Let us start. Today we shall discuss the last part of Chapter 6, Geomorphic Processes. And now let me present my screen. Today we are going to learn about soil forming factors. Soil forming factors. Last time we discussed about this process of soil formation, and so now let us read about the factors affecting the formation of soils. So we have these 5 basic factors, okay, that control the formation of soils. Those are this parent material, then topography, climate, biological activity, and time. Okay, see here. These factors affecting the soil formation have been presented in the form of an equation by Hans Zeni in the year 1941 as given below. Actually, he was a famous soil scientist born in Switzerland. Okay, and see here is the equation. Okay, this is the equation, and so it means that soil is the function of climate, organisms, relief, parent materials, and the time. Okay, so this equation tells us that soil is the function of climate, then organisms, then relief, parent materials, and time. So here this S refers to this soil formation, Cl or sometimes C refers to climate, then O refers to organisms or biotic factor, that is vegetations and organisms. R refers to relief, and P stands for parent material, and T stands for time. And I think you may be seeing some dot here, okay, some dot here. So these dots in the equation are mean for the inclusion of other factors which may be of local importance. So in addition to these 5 important factors, some local factors also may be there. So to include those factors, so he put some dots here, okay, in the equation. Now let us read the text. So the first important factor is the parent material. Okay, so parent material is a passive control factor in the soil formation. Passive control factor means actually another external force will act on it, and simply this material will decay and will form this soil, and that is why it is known as passive control factor. And these parent materials can be these in situ or on-site withered rock debris, or residual soils, or transported deposit, or transported soil. So parent material means any in situ, means found in a place, withered material, withered rock debris, or it may be a transported one also. See, let us see one photograph, and see here it is a soil profile, and see here this is the uppermost layer of the soil, and here it contains organic matter, humus, and this is what we call this A horizon. Okay, and here this is another this horizon of soil, another layer of soil, we call it V horizon, and below it we may find these fragments of rocks. Okay, and from these fragments of rocks soils will be derived. and these materials are known as parent material. Okay, parent material. And below the parent material you will find blocks of these rocks, and those are known as bedrocks. Okay, so soil formation depends upon a texture, that is the size of the debris, and the structure, that is the disposition of individual grain, that is the movement of the individual grains, and the mineral and the chemical composition of the rock debris or deposits. Okay, so the nature and the rate of weathering and the depth of weathering mantle are important considerations under the parent material, and there may be differences in soil cover, in soil over similar bedrock, and dissimilar bedrock may have the similar soils above them. So this may be due to transportation. Okay, so let us repeat. There may be differences in soil over similar bedrock, and dissimilar bedrocks may have these similar soils above them. So this is because of the transportation work, okay, because of the movement of the materials. But see, when soils are very young and have not matured, these show strong links, okay, with the type of the parent rock. When soils are not very old and are not matured, okay, there is a very close relationship between the these parent materials and this type of the soil. Okay, and see, if for example if the parent rock contains iron, okay, then the soil also may contain iron and may give a reddish color. So in this way there may be some similarities, okay, say between the this parent rock and the soil if the soil is not matured. However, if it is a transported one, then there may not be similarity. Okay, the bedrock, the parent rock, and the soil may be different in characteristics. And in case of some limestone areas where weathering processes are specific and peculiar soils then soils will show clear relation with the parent rocks. So in case of limestone area, okay, the main weathering process is solution, and that is why there is a very close relationship between the parent rock, that is limestone, and the nature of the soil. So in this way these parent materials, parent rocks, determine the nature of the these soils. Okay, and next we have this topography. Any question regarding this parent material as a soil forming factor? Any question regarding parent material as a soil forming factor? You must know that if the parent materials are young, okay, if the soils are not matured, if the soils are young, then there is a very close relationship between the parent material and the nature of the soil. And next we have another important factor, that is topography or relief, okay, as you find in the equation. So this topography is also another passive control factor, that means not active, okay, another force will act. Then the influence of topography, that is landform, okay, through the is felt. The influence of topography is felt through the amount of exposure of the surface covered by parent materials to sunlight, and the amount of the surface and the subsurface drainage over through the parent materials. So influence of topography is felt through the amount of exposure of a surface covered by parent material to sunlight. Actually, aspect is very important in this case. see here, if this is a mountain range running east-west, okay, then this if it is located in the northern hemisphere, then this southern side, let us say this is the southern side of the mountain, and this is the northern side of the mountain, and this southern side of the mountain will get more sunlight, and hence the depth of the soil will be okay, great here on this side, because the action of the this weathering process is great where the sunlight is okay, is more than the other side. And see here, soil will be thin on the steep slope and thick over the flat upland areas. Okay, so in this way topography determines the depth of the mantle. See, soil will be thin on the steep slope and thick over flat uplands, then over gentle slopes where erosion is slow and the percolation of water is good. That means absorption of water is good. Soil formation is very favorable. So soil formation is very favorable on the gentle slopes. Okay, and the soil over flat areas may develop a thick layer of clay with good accumulation of organic matter, giving the soil dark color. So in this way topography influences the nature of the soil. Let us see one diagram. Okay, see here. Here this area, okay, so this is a very steep slope area, and so here we have very little absorption of water. Okay, very little filtration of water, and there will be erosion also. Okay, and here this is the gentle slope area, and there will be some filtration, some absorption also will be there, and less erosion. And here, see, this is the flat plain areas, and here, okay, you will get a good soil with this enough organic matter. Okay, and on the steep slope, as mentioned in the book, we find these thin soils. Okay, and here we find in the these plain areas thick soils. Next we have climate. Okay, climate is an important active factor. Okay, so it acts on the parent material. Okay, it acts on this landform. So this climate is an active factor in soil formation. Then here these climatic elements involved in the soil formation, soil development are this moisture, that is precipitation. Okay, in terms of intensity, frequency, duration of precipitation. Then another one climatic elements is temperature in terms of seasonal and diurnal variation. This seasonal and diurnal variation means the difference between the maximum and the minimum temperature. Okay, maybe within a day or from between two seasons. So this is very important. And now let us see how climate this affect this formation of soil. So the first important climatic element is precipitation. Okay, precipitation may be in the form of rainfall or snowfall, and so it gives soil moisture. Its moisture contain, and max chemical and biological activities are possible. So because of precipitation, because of rainfall and snowfall, it gives moisture to the material, parent material, and which make possible the chemical reaction within the material, and these biological activities also possible. Last time we discussed that so on the parent material, bacteria, then lichens and mosses will occupy, and because of that, okay, there may be transformation or further this chemical reaction, further chemical decomposition in the parent material, thus leading to the formation of soil. Okay, so excess of water in the downward transportation of soil components through the soil elevation and deposits the same down, that is elevation. When there is excess water, okay, in a region, then there will be this transportation of the materials, what we call elevation, and it may be deposited in a particular place, that is elevation. So now let me show you. Okay, see here. Here we have a surface, and so this is the topmost layer, let us say, and here this is another layers. Okay, each layer is known as horizons. Let us say here the topmost layer contains many these minerals. Okay, and different minerals are found in the topmost layer, including this humus. And when there is enough water, when there is excessive rainfall, then the rainwater will dissolve, will infiltrate and dissolve the minerals and will be carried downwards. Okay, these minerals will be transported downwards, and this process of transportation of the these minerals downward is known as this elevation. Okay, that is mentioned in the book, elevation. And these transported materials, okay, will be deposited in, okay, in another layer, okay, which is located downward. So these materials will be transported and will be deposited here, maybe in the sea horizon. Okay, and this process of deposition is known as elevation. Okay, elevation. This is known as elevation. So in this way, water is very important, okay, in the formation of this soil. Water will transport the minerals from the top downward, and that transportation is known as elevation, and it will be deposited, okay, in a layer, and that process of deposition is known as elevation. And in climates like wet equatorial, okay, rainy areas with high rainfall, okay, not only this calcium, sodium, magnesium, potassium, but also major part of silica is removed from the soil. So because of this elevation and the elevation process, okay, say calcium, sodium, then magnesium, potassium, these are different types of salts, okay, as well as silica is also removed from the soil, from the top layer of the soil. Okay, from here it is removed and transported downwards. And this removal of silica from the soil is known as desilication. Okay, the process of removing silicate materials, silica, from the soil is known as desilication. And in dry climates, because of high temperature, then evaporation exceeds precipitation, and hence groundwater is brought up to the surface by capillary action. In the process, the water evaporates and leaving behind salt in the soil. So what is going on in the dry climates, in the desert areas? Because of high temperature, evaporation will be more than the precipitation. Okay, and because of that, groundwater will be brought up to the surface by capillary action. So now let us see. See here, let us say this is dry climate areas, and so in the dry areas there will be rapid evaporation. Okay, evaporation will be greater than the precipitation in the dry areas. So water from the underground, let us say this is aquifer containing water. Okay, water from the underground will rise upwards through the capillary action. So it will rise upwards, and when it rises upwards, then this salt, okay, maybe sodium, magnesium, potassium found in the soil will be dissolved and will be brought on the surface, and this water will be evaporated by the sunshine. Okay, this water will be evaporated, and hence crystals of salt will remain on the surface of the this soil, and hence the soil becomes saline. Okay, and such salt form into a crust, into a layer. Okay, and the soil is known as hard pans. So water will rise up. Okay, and just because evaporation, then a layer of salt will be found on the surface, and that is known as hard pans. So in the tropical climates, in the areas with intermediate precipitation condition, that is with intermediate means medium amount of rainfall, calcium carbonate nodules, it is known as concur, okay, are formed in the soil. So in the areas of medium amount rainfall, nodules of calcium carbonate, okay, known as concur in India, are formed in the soil. Then see, temperature, another element of climate, acts in two ways. So increasing or reducing chemical and biological activity. Okay, temperature may increase or reduce the chemical and the biological activity. So chemical activity is increased in higher temperature. Okay, chemical activity is increased in the higher temperature and reduced in the cooler temperatures, with the exception of this carbonation process. So carbonation is related with the solution. And this stops in the freezing condition. So this action of this chemical action, okay, chemical reaction stops in the freezing conditions, and that is why tropical soils with higher temperature show deeper profiles, and in the tundra region, okay, in the frozen tundra region, the soil contains largely mechanically broken materials. That means the soil is not matured, it contains big fragments of rocks. Okay, so let us see one diagram. See here, this is the amount of rainfall, okay, and here in the tropical areas temperature is high. See here in tropical areas, see the graph here, temperature is very high, and so that is why we have got a thick layer of soil here. This is in the tropical areas. Okay, the rainfall is high, then temperature is high, and that is why we have a thick layer of the soil mantle. And in the desert areas, see, rainfall is less than 25 centimeters in a year, and temperature is still high, and see here we have got a thin layer of soil, and so this is for the temperate region. So here we have got medium amount of precipitation, and temperature also not so high, okay, moderate. See here, see the graph, temperature is moderate, and see, okay, we have got moderate depth of mantle, and see, this is in the tundra region. Here temperature is close to freezing point, 0. Okay, and that is why the layer of the soil, the profile of soil is very thin. So in this way climate affects the formation of soil. Okay, any question from your side? If you don't have, then let me proceed. Okay, so next we have biological activity, and see, vegetative cover organisms that occupy the parent materials from the beginning and also in the later stages help in the adding of organic matter. Okay, the vegetative matter, then dead bodies of the organisms will provide humus, organic matter, okay, in the soil. And see here, this it also helps in the retention of water, moisture in the soil, then nitrogen also. Then dead plants provide humus, okay, that humus, you know, that partially decomposed organic matter, okay, and the finely divided organic matter of the soil. Then some organic acids which form during the humidification adds, okay, in decomposition, in decomposing the minerals of the soil. That means see, some plants like mosses, lichens, and some organisms see excrete, okay, secrete, release some acids, okay, organic acids, and that also, okay, lead to the further decomposition of the materials, including the rocks. That is the point mentioned here, okay. And the intensity of bacterial activity shows up differences between soil of cold and a warm climate. Let us see. Humus accumulates in cold climates as the bacterial growth is slow. So in the cold climate, this partially decomposed matter, okay, of the leaves and the organisms, okay, will be collected, because the action of the bacteria is slow, and because of that, this undecomposed or partially decomposed organic matter, okay, say, may form a layer of peat, okay, in the cool areas like Arctic and the tundra climate. And in the humid tropical equatorial climate, bacterial growth, the action of bacteria, okay, is intense, and that vegetation is rapidly oxidized, leaving very low humus content in the soil. That means it provides rich organic matter, okay, that all those dead bodies and leaves of the plants are oxidized, decomposed totally, and so it gives a good nutrient to the soil, okay. And at the same time, bacteria and other soils organisms take gaseous nitrogen from the air, from the atmosphere, and convert it into a chemical form that can be used by the plant. So this is what we call nitrosyl fixation, okay. This nitrogen found in the atmosphere is fixed by some kind of bacteria that is found in the roots of leguminous plant, and does help, okay, in the fixing of nitrogen in the soil, a very important component of soil, and this process is known as nitrogen fixation. So rhizobium, this is a type of bacteria, okay, lives in the roots of nodules of leguminous plants, fixes nitrogen beneficent to host of plant. So rhizobium is a kind of bacteria, okay, which lives in the root nodules of leguminous plant like pea, mutton, okay, and other these other types of similar types of plants. And this rhizobium fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere in the soil, and it gives beneficial to host of plant, to many plants. And the influence of large animals like these ants, then termites, earthworm, rodents is mechanical, but very important, okay, because of organisms, earthworm, then termite, rodents, and other burrowing animal will turn up and down the soil. They will mix the soil, and in this way it will enrich the soil, okay. At the same time, in case of earthworms, is they feed on soil. That means earthworms, you know, they feed on the soil, and that is why the texture and the chemistry of the soil that comes out of their body, that is excreta, also will change. They will eat the soil and they will release the soil. So in this way, the texture and the chemical composition of the of the soil is totally changed because of the earthworms, okay. And see about vegetation. See here, if there is thick cover vegetation, then it will give more soil nutrients and a thick layer of the this humus. And in the areas of less vegetation cover, Okay, less humus, less organic matter, and a thin layer of soil. Then the last factor is the time. Okay, and see, time is the third passive control factor. Okay, third passive control factor. This controlling the soil formation. The length of time the soil forming process operate determines the maturation of the soil and the soil profile development. Okay, length of time will determine the maturity of the soil and the development of this profile. That means development of layers of soils. A soil becomes mature when all the soil forming processes act for a sufficiently long developing profile. That means if it takes a long time, or if the soil is very old, that means the soil is mature. Okay, a soil becomes mature when all the soil forming processes act for a sufficiently long period of time, and it will develop this thick layer of the soil having different layers. Okay, different types of profiles. Soil developing from recently deposited alluvium or glacial till are considered young and exhibit no horizons. If the soils are young, okay, then you may not find horizons, you may not find layers in the soil, or this horizon may be poorly developed. And if say the soil is matured, then you will find a thick layer having different horizons. So in this way, time also determines the nature of the this soil. Okay, the older the soil, then the thicker and the finer of the materials, and vice versa. Okay, and here this is the summary. So here parent row, I think you may be remembering this diagram. It is taken out from the lower class book, but it is very useful, important. Okay, parent rock determine the color, texture, that is the size of the material, chemical properties of this, then mineral content, then permeability. Okay, so parent rocks determine the color, texture, chemical properties of the soil. Then relief, okay, determine the accumulation of the soil. We have learned that on the steep slope areas the soils are thin, for example. Then climate, okay, this temperature and the rainfall influence the rate of weathering and the humus formation. And this vegetation, okay, flora, fauna, and microorganism affect the rate of humus formation. And the time determine the thickness of the soil profile. So this is about the factors affecting the soil formation. Okay, any question from your side, girls?
No, sir.
Okay, then this is the last part of this chapter, and so let us stop here for today. Thank you very much for joining my class.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.